Good afternoon and welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Leadership Tools and Strategies. So thrilled to have you in. It is May 26th. We've just come off the Memorial Day holiday and want to thank you for being with us today. We're so thrilled to have with us our guest, Megan Keene from the Nonprofit Technology Network. We're going to dig in just a few seconds to that topic and really dig into the blessings of technology in the nonprofit sector and where we're going and where we've been. Before we do that, I want to remind you about a couple important things. As always, we will engage on Thursday night at 9 p.m. in #nonprofitchat. It's an opportunity for us to take the conversation from today and go to that next step as we think about what does it look like for each of us to engage in some of these important questions regarding technology in our nonprofit organizations. Also want to remind you that we're just around the corner from the June issue of the magazine. You can get that centervisionleadership.org/magazine. Our June issue is going to be focusing on giving for impact. We all know that things are changing in the nonprofit sector as we think about giving, and so it's how do we ask these important questions about how do we give currently and how can we continue to grow our impact through the dollars that are given to us by donors. Also want to remind you, you can always join our community, Center Vision Leadership/org. That's centervisionleadership.org/register. Excuse me. You can come into the community. We feel like it's an important place for us to be able to share in some really important conversations, specifically surrounding leadership in the nonprofit sector. All right, enough about us, enough me talking. Megan, so thrilled to have you in with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Megan, Nonprofit Technology Network, take us through what is NTEN? What do you guys do?
Great. Well, NTEN is a nonprofit. We're actually a nonprofit ourselves. We're an 11-person nonprofit, and our goal really is to help other nonprofits use technology more effectively for their missions. So if we're doing our job, hopefully we've worked our way out of a job because we've helped everybody be able to use technology more efficiently. But what we do through that is we're a large membership-based organization, and we provide support for nonprofits and for-profits that work with nonprofits, as well as individuals and consultants that are involved in the social good sector, as well as some 501c3 organizations, but also social benefit organizations that do work. And what we do is we offer a number of online tools to help folks. So everything from online trainings and include in-person workshops to our annual conference that we have every year, as well as our annual summit, which is a little more deeper dive into some advanced topics in technology. So we also have a number of research publications that we publish as well, and the nonprofit job board. So kind of a whole gamut of different things that we have to offer for folks.
Absolutely. How long has NTEN been around, Megan?
So NTEN started back in 2000. So it's kind of its early days were of the circuit rider community. So it was kind of a group of really hardcore techies. And then from there, as technology kind of became more a part of everybody's job, our community really expanded a lot to include people in all kinds of job types, everything from the fun people doing marketing and communications work to fundraising to program development. So it really sort of, and as well as sort of the hard, we've still got a lot of those hardcore IT folks that have been around for a long time too. So it's quite a mix.
Absolutely. And now your role, you're the membership director there. What kind of fun does that look like for you?
Great. Well, so underneath membership, it's funny because we call it membership, but it's really kind of community. I think of membership as really being at the center of what we do, because community is really at the center of what we do. So our membership is approximately a little under 8,000 people, actual members, but we have over 70,000 community participants just in our overall community, whether that's through our online groups or folks who are getting our newsletter. So I oversee our membership community as well as the larger community, and that includes our social media channels and our online platform, as well as our local groups and our community-driven webinars that we have on a monthly basis.
Awesome. And folks, I can tell you from experience, Center Vision Leadership Foundation, we're members of NTEN. We were introduced by our good friends Jamie Nodder and Maddie Grant, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced us, and we've been thrilled. There's a lot of really intriguing stuff here we're going to dig into as we go through the show today, thinking about what does it look like to be in a nonprofit and to be able to properly utilize technology. So let's get started there. We recognize that every nonprofit faces challenges. You know, we're always dealing with questions about fundraising. We're always dealing with questions about how do we engage and how do we encourage our members. We're talking about how do we work with our boards, and we're talking about a lot of different things. And technology has really, it went from probably, as you guys started, Megan, it probably started as a, oh, hey, you know, organizations who use technology were kind of, oh, that's neat. That's a unique niche. To now, where we're sitting, it's 2015, and if you're not using technology well, you've got an issue. So how has NTEN worked over the years to be able to kind of lessen the gap or lessen the struggles that nonprofits are facing in regard to technology?
Well, one thing we've really tried to do is offer a variety of different programs that are really going to serve people in any kind of job function, as well as different levels. So one of the key ways that we've been doing that is we have something called our Nonprofit Technology Academy, or we call it NTA for short. And this is an 8-week training course that's all online, so it can be done remotely, and you can do this with more than one person at your organization. And for most organizations, it's free or at very low cost if you're at a higher tier. And it's really, and it's a course. I mean, so it's a commitment, but you go through each stage of the process that's really giving you a good foundation. So it's everything from like, how do you develop a technology plan, to here's what your social media, here's how you're going to operate your social media. So folks really have a pretty comprehensive view of like just a really good game plan that they can go from there and build their technology skills, and also really take that back to their organization. So we've had some really good success with folks that have done it in, like, it's been 1 or 2 people in an organization, and then they're really the people that are empowered to go back to their organization and help kind of bring everybody else, start ramping up other folks, so that's one example of a program that we offer. Another thing that we do is our annual conference every year is called our Nonprofit Technology Conference, or NTC for short. We love our acronyms, but what we do with that every year is we have a number of we had over 100 different sessions at this 3-day conference, and ranging everything from technology for fundraising to basically setting up a server situation if you're going into or how to manage your various social media in conjunction with your email campaigns, that kind of thing. So we really try to run the gamut. But a lot of the ways that we've kind of tried to bring other people up is that we've seen people who have been around the community for a long time, and those people have really moved into more of a leadership role. So everything that we do is really very community driven. So we have right now, for our annual conference for next year, we've opened session submissions. So folks that are experts who have been around the community for a long time, or folks that are working with nonprofits, can propose a session. Or if you're a nonprofit and you're like, I don't want to lead this session, but I have this great idea for, like, I really would love to go to a session that's about this topic, people can submit their ideas. And we use that last year we got, I think, over 600 submissions. Wow. So our steering committee had quite the job to narrow that down into a conference program. But it just goes to show that, like, we really try to listen to the community, and we really had like a very varied number of topics for folks to be able to choose from. So it's kind of like, so people might start off, coming to NTEN and not really having a lot of skills, and then moving into more of a leadership role. So there's kind of like a path that they get involved with, or they just find support.
Yeah.
like they come to our conference and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to know I'm not the only person that's dealing with this issue, you know, and that's what we hear again and again. So I think what we really see as part of that is that when people get connected to NTEN, they're really getting connected to their personal support system, if you will, in a way too. They're not only getting the educational training and articles there, but they're also getting connected to people, and you know, it can help point them in the right direction. So I
Yeah.
get to have a great job because this is the people I get to interact with all the time, and like our community is just awesome.
Sure thing. One of the things that sticks out to me as I look at NTEN and I think about kind of that model of the community. A lot of times organizations, when they struggle with a particular issue, they think, hey, can we bring in a consultant? Okay, can we bring in a consultant, and can that person come in and fix our issues, right? I mean, that's the mentality I think we a lot of times have, whether it's leadership or technology or you know, total quality management. You know, we used to do those kinds of things all the time where we wanted to bring people in, and yet what you've described and even kind of how we run at Center Vision is that idea of, if I can introduce you to a community, and if I can bring you into a place of other people who are dealing with these same challenges, as you use the term, we can provide support to one another. We can provide an environment in which we can learn together and we can engage this process. And I think that's one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about NTEN thus far as a member, is to be able to sit there and we'll talk in just a second about the communities of practice, but in the community of practice, to be able to engage and find out, hey, my colleagues at all these different organizations across the country are doing this, this, and this when it comes to a big important issue. And I go, wow, you know, it's not, oh, hey, somebody's going to come in and they're going to give me a silver bullet. It's, I'm learning from other practitioners that are out in the field and thinking about what does real-time deployment look like for them. So that's I think a really powerful model for you guys. And as well, you always know that the voice of the member is going to be the thing that drives the community.
Absolutely. And I found, like, so I actually came to NTEN as a member before I became a staff person. So I have a kind of an interesting perspective on, like, just, you know, being a member for a long time and really getting that, so always being so surprised that if I ever asked a question on the online community, folks were just so willing to like help out. And, you know, I just always felt like I had this resource there, you know, in my work. So it was really helpful to like sort of have that, be on that, you know, so on that side of things, you know, in the trenches, just to know that, like, oh, okay, I've got, you know, I know there's some articles there, but I also know that there's people there, you know, and I feel that it also is a good checks and balance for us, because we are, as a nonprofit ourselves, we have to practice what we preach in a lot of ways, you know, and so we kind of use ourselves as guinea pigs to a certain extent of, like, you know, for example, we're going through a website redesign right now, and we've used ourselves as a case study. So we've periodically put some updates on our website of, like, here's what's going well, here's what we've screwed up on, and, you know, here's how we're learning, you know, as we go along, because we're really in the same boat in a lot of ways. So we try to really embody, like, that we're also learning. And so when we hear feedback, you know, both positive and negative, we really try to incorporate that. And so that's what's great, is we sort of can course correct too, you know, based on the kind of things that we hear from our community.
Sure, sure. So one of the things that many of us are dealing with is the fact that we're in these small nonprofit organizations. Maybe it's a startup in essence, or it's a small, we were talking off air about small faith-based organizations or whatever. We come in and we're looking to try to figure out, what on earth am I going to do? Yeah, I know I need a social media strategy, and I know I need to be able to implement and deploy technology better in my organization. And frankly, I don't have that background. So I come in, and what can I find in NTEN? What can NTEN really open the doors for me to be able to see?
Yeah, well, I suggest the first thing. So I think one thing that people come to NTEN and they're like, they can get a little overwhelmed. We're hoping our website helps with this, but you can get a little overwhelmed because there's a lot of resources there. There's a lot of content there. There's a lot of events, and it's a lot. But what I suggest is starting small. like, if nothing else, I really encourage people to join our online community. If they go to NTEN.org and just go to the community, there is something called the NTEN Discuss List. And that's just a general discussion group for nonprofits. And it's, people can bring up topics, everything from, hey, I need to choose a database. Has anyone done this? Do you have any suggestions? To, I noticed suddenly my Facebook reach is going down. Has anyone else noticed that? So it kind of runs the gamut of things like that. And that's by far our biggest online group. And that's a great thing because you can subscribe, you can choose how often you want to get emailed about when someone posts to the group. It's free. All you need is a login and password, and you can do, so you don't need to be an NTEN member to subscribe to the group. You can just get its feel for the community, and it's a great way to get started. And it's also a great way that if you're a person that does have some expertise, it's a great way to get your voice out there and get connected to some folks that, might need might be in need of your services, or, that kind of thing, or just to get an idea, get a pulse on the kind of things that people are asking about and the kinds of needs that folks have.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing, because a lot of times we deal with we don't know what we don't know. It's that aspect of I'm going into something, and maybe my only frame of reference is we'll throw website development. My only frame of reference is WordPress. What are other nonprofits using? And so it's a great opportunity to be able to ask some significant questions and find out, what are other people doing? What are they using? How are they going about that? Even some unique questions. We get into a lot of times questions about design. I need to be able to come up with something. I can't afford, a $6,000 suite for design. Is anybody else got any tips or any ideas? How do I automate, this process? Or what's a good, autoresponder process? And I think that's one of the really exciting things is you've got a community of people who get what you're doing.
Yeah, and the other great thing is that on the group is folks can upload resources too. So, for example, someone was asking about a policy for remote employees, and folks gave, you can give an example, folks gave some examples, or someone was looking for a social media policy. So there's a few got uploaded, to there. So you have like a template right there to, get started, and like, boom, you've just saved some consulting dollars right there.
Yeah, that's it. And now you guys primarily, you function both online and offline. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting. Obviously, you're offline, you have the NTC, which is your annual big conference. And then you also have, you mentioned the summit, which is kind of that very in-depth focus. But you have something called the 501 Tech Club. Talk a little bit more about what the 501 Tech Club is, and even what kind of the span of that or that work is.
Sure. Yeah. So we realize a lot of the value of having people meet up in person, and, our annual conference is kind of like a big family reunion, but, not everyone can make the family reunion every year. And so what we try to do is on a local, and it's only once a year. So on a local level is our 501 Tech Clubs, are local groups that meet up in person, typically once a month or every other month, depending on the group. And it's usually a pretty informal meetup, but they'll usually be 2 or 3 hours on a weeknight. And the format can vary anywhere from like a happy hour type of format to other formats where folks have a speaker and there's some networking opportunities. But it's basically an opportunity for you to meet up with local folks in your area and talk about something in technology and get that support. So we've actually had, we have about 25 groups right now in North America. And then it's very exciting is we have a partner actually in Poland who has been piloting a similar Tech Club program, like using our Tech Club model. So I actually got to, I was a speaker at their conference a couple years back, and help them, talk to a couple of the local leaders that they had there, and got them set up. And so they have just been rocking it. I think they kicked the program off in 2014, and by the end of the year had 15 groups. And so it's pretty spectacular. And that was really helpful because they were dealing with a lot of folks that were in some remote areas. And so getting getting the access to technology, or people just weren't talking to each other. So like the knowledge was there, but people just weren't connecting. And we found that to be really similar in the States. So I'm actually in San Francisco, so it's much more common to have, you know, like local groups and a lot of things going on, but some of these smaller, you know, smaller cities, not necessarily so, or things are a little more spread out. So we see that meetup groups is a great opportunity for folks to get that local support. So
sure. If somebody was looking for, you know, is there a 501 tech club in my area? What would they do, Megan? I mean, what's the easiest way for them to find that out?
if they go to the community tab, if you go to nten.org/community, there is a list of 501. If you go down in the drop-down menu, that you can find a list of the groups that are in your area. And the thing is, if you don't see a group there, but if you're a person that's like, hey, I'm thinking I might want to organize that, shoot us an email, community@nten.org, and we can help you get you started. So these are really driven by the folks by our volunteers, like on a local level. However, NTEN does provide a lot of support. So we can get you an online group. We provide a certain amount of financial support to these groups every month for food and drink, and we can give you a lot of insights and other group leaders to get you connected with other group leaders who can give you some of their tips for, you know, planning an event. Because sometimes we'll have folks that like, this is the first time I've ever managed something like that, but we have other organizers who have been doing it for a while and can say like, hey, here's what I found to be really effective, or here's some ideas on topics. So usually we have a couple of people. We found that it works well if you have someone else who's willing to help lead things up with you.
Yeah. That's important, and I think you know, it gives people an opportunity to be face to face. And I think a lot of times in our world, we think about, well, technology has allowed us to be community with people across the globe. Here you are, you're in San Francisco, I'm in Mobile, Alabama. We've got folks that are going to be watching and listening from around the world. And so sometimes we forget about the importance of that local face-to-face as part of our utilization of technology. So I think the 501 tech clubs are a really unique opportunity. Contrast that now to your community of practice that you guys host through NTEN.
Great. So our communities of practice are affinity groups. So they're much more based on like what your topic of interest is. So we have communities of practice that range from folks that are Drupal users or WordPress users to we have one that's women in technology. Another one is on folks that are doing some kind of project management. And so they really kind of, and we have another one that's on digital communications group. So really just depending on your area of interest, we had one that was for arts organizations. And these groups are primarily online. A lot of these groups have formed out of our annual conference. So sometimes folks have met up in person and been like, hey, we'd love to keep this conversation going. And that's how, and then the online group was born out of that. And some of them have been around for a while. And what they typically, these groups have an online discussion, but they usually have some way of communicating in real time every month. So that's sometimes that looks like a tweet chat. So they'll have a tweet chat, you know, using a certain hashtag. Or sometimes this works and folks will have a conference call. So we have a conference call number that we give our leaders to use, and they can have a monthly call and sometimes folks will have, for those calls, they'll have a shared note that they just use in Google Docs. And so people can be corresponding that way too. And then they have a record of, you know, things that they talked about too. So that's another, and sometimes they'll bring in speakers too. So that's kind of another way that folks have gotten that support that's really specific to what their area of interest is.
Yeah, that's such an important thing, and I don't want to undersell this at all, because I think one of the things, again, we oftentimes we struggle with an area, and what do we do with it? You know, other than calling in the big consultant, what do we do? And so when you see a community that's developed in this type of a fashion, what you recognize is the way that the family, I love the family reunion metaphor you used, we recognize when family comes together, there's a lot of information sharing that goes on. And I think that's one of the things that's really unique about this is how do we get into the best practices? How do we get into the things that are working in various formats? How do we learn from the benchmarking that's done by organizations? Or even, as you pointed out, hey, somebody's going to drop their policy and just allow us to be able to think about how could that be adapted for our organization. And so this is an opportunity for you to be able to connect with other people who are doing the same type of thing. And what's really unique, I think, about this group is you really have everything from the neophyte, somebody who knows very little about technology, but because of the organization that they're in, they're kind of being tasked with some aspect of things. Two, you have folks that are way up there. That, I mean, they have all sorts of technology experience. They've been working in it for years, and they really get what's going on. So it's an opportunity to be able to find somebody in your network to be able to think about, and how do you learn from them. So this is a great opportunity. We have been thrilled to be part of the Nonprofit Technology Network. We think it's something that's got a lot of value. It's something where you're constantly learning from other people, and sometimes even there are passive things that you're receiving that you just go, huh, that's really unique. I would have never thought about that. And it's not even that you've actively gone to pursue it, but because of being part of that community, you're able to partake in the collective learning that's there. So yeah, it's a really fantastic format.
Yeah, well, what I've seen as being really exciting, and kind of ties is like it's been such a great thing for. I mean, I think it's good for organizations as a whole because they're having more people at their organizations that are being empowered to like not be afraid of technology and be able to make those technology decisions. But also on the individual level, just from professional development, it's like you might start off as like just kind of accidental techie, or maybe you're the person that knows the most about it at your organization, and you just kind of start getting in, but then you can actually move into more of a leadership role. And we've seen that happen, and it's happened for me too. I went from being an attendee to NTC to speaking at NTC to being an NTEN staffer, and it's been an interesting journey in that regard.
Absolutely. Now, Megan, if people want to learn more, easiest way to get to NTEN is what?
It's just nten.org, so it's just nten.org. And what you can also go there is if you go to nten.org, sign up. That's also our newsletter, and you can get our monthly newsletter. And we have opt-in options, so you can decide what you want to opt in and receive information from us. But that's a great way. Like that gives us a roundup of our articles every month, and we also include something called every month. One thing that we do at NTEN is we have a pretty big sense of humor, and so part of that is that we always include something called things we like, and that is just our things that we find around the web that we found to be really great. So we're not. We are not above sending around a cat video if or a particularly good cat video too, because we figure while you're doing people work really hard in the nonprofit sector, and you got to have a laugh there too. So, and speaking of laughs, you might have seen like a little thing crawling across my screen, but that would be my cat, because I work remotely for NTEN, and so sometimes we use Google Hangouts a lot, so occasionally he decides to strategically come up to the screen.
I think there's something unique about cats just love to be on video. That's really what it comes down to. So absolutely. Now, Megan, if somebody wanted to follow NTEN on Twitter, easiest way to get to them is NTEN.org. We're just at NTEN.org on Twitter. Okay. All right. And what you'll find is you'll find a lot of really valuable information. There's a lot of accessibility that NTEN is seeking to give nonprofit organizations. And whether you're coming in as somebody who you don't want to be a member, but you're very interested in learning, to somebody who says, you know what, I really want to invest in this community. There's a lot of different opportunities to get involved, whether it's in the local 501 tech clubs, to be part of the community of practice, to go to NTC, which is their conference, and then even the summit. And if you don't mind, what are the dates coming up for that big conference here? Yeah, so our Leading Change Summit is coming up in Washington, D.C., and that's going to be September 13th through 16th. Okay. And so information and more information, including our program agenda and registration information, is all on our website as well. Fantastic.
and
Well,
move
Megan,
from
thank
there.
you so much for sharing with us today. I think there's a lot for each one of us to be able to think about how do we best utilize technology in our nonprofit organization? And I think that's one of the things that NTEN provides for each one of us is an opportunity to be able to find out what others are doing and think about what those best practices would look like in our organization. So,
Great. Well,
yep.
thank you so much. This was such an opportunity, and we love having you. We're so glad that you joined as members. You know, kind of that word of mouth, seeing that in action was great.
It's a blessing. Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate what you guys are doing, and we appreciate you listening and joining in. Look forward to seeing you Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern at #nonprofit chat. We'll dig deeper into the subject. Have a great day.